Hello and welcome to another episode of the Self-Made Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Thanks to a number of big shows over the last few weeks, I've had a number of new eyes on the Instagram page and on the podcast itself. And I realise many of you might not know me and who I am, which is really weird to say when I started this podcast just over a year ago. And it was my friends and my family downloading it. And now we've had downloads in every single continent in the world, which is so amazing and humbling. So I thought I'd take this week's show to tell you a little bit about myself, answer some questions I've gotten from you guys over the course of last year, and to celebrate that sort of mid-time between the podcast turning 1 year old and my birthday and coming into the 30s. So I hope you enjoy the show, but I've just put this little intro in here just to let you guys know that coming up into summer now, we have a few coaching spots available, in particular for people who want to get into photo shoot shape. Whether you're a coach yourself or want to be able to show that you can practice what you preach and be a leading example to your clients, or whether you are somebody who wants to get a better result than every personal trainer out there, we have a few spots available. So if you want to grab one of the remaining spots, please find me on Instagram at Kingsley Dutton and drop me a DM with the word coach, and we can set up an initial strategy call to help you get your fat loss or body transformation goals this year. But without further ado, I will leave you with myself this time. Hope you enjoyed the show, and if you have any further questions that you would like to know about me, I'm always happy to answer them. So head over to my Instagram, start a conversation. I don't bite. Hello everyone. So this is a little bit of a different episode, and the podcast recently turned 1 year old, and that is in itself amazing. And with downloads in every continent in the world, I couldn't quite believe that. I remember when I was one continent short, and I was literally going around all my friends and saying, do you know anyone in South America? Because I want this to be an internationally known podcast. And lo and behold, it took a little bit of time. I resisted the urge to just use a VPN and cheat, and we eventually got there. But a year in, and I want to celebrate that by telling you guys a little bit about me. So I asked for some questions, and I have got a number of questions talking about everything from my life in Hong Kong to the fitness industry and everything in between. So hope you enjoy this episode, learn a bit about me, and if you want to ask any more questions, drop me a message on Instagram and I'll happily answer them. So question number one, where am I from? So I was originally born in Dundee, Scotland, although I moved when I was about a year old. That's why I don't really have the accent, but anyone who knows me knows I'm very, very, very patriotically Scottish, and particularly when it comes to rugby, and I'm currently looking for my kilt, which is going to hopefully be a family tartan, for my wedding in just over a year's time, which is scary and exciting at the same time. Why did I move to Hong Kong? So originally I was going to head to Mumbai, India to work for the company that I used to work for to set up and manage a gym over there. But that didn't work out, and I ended up working for their Hong Kong gym. So I never really planned to move to Hong Kong, but I got the opportunity, and I'd always wanted to travel. And unlike a number of my friends that did this, in that 18, 19 and early 20s, I focused all my attention and drive into my career. And it was an itch that I really wanted to scratch. So it was the right opportunity at the right time. And Ellie, bless her, has always been supportive of me in my career. So I wanted to, before we were too tied down with stuff, I wanted to take that leap. And took the leap and never regretted it since. I always sort of lived my life by the Richard Branson phrase of like, when you get an amazing opportunity, you say yes first, and then you learn how to do it later. That's what took me to London, and that's what took me to Hong Kong. And I had no idea what I was doing, and I was just making it up as I went along. But you learn along the way, and I generally believe that travel really does broaden the mind. As cheesy as that sentence is, it might not be obvious. It might not be, whoa, I changed immediately, or there was key moments. But when I look back over the last 3 years in Hong Kong, and I look at the person I am today, I do feel a very, very different person. And that is something that's definitely happened through my choice to travel and move away from home and be in London and be in Hong Kong, and the level of independence I've got, I wouldn't change it. And I really, really love that. What's my biggest culture shock since moving to Hong Kong? That's a really, really, really good question. I suppose, just the level of busyness. London is busy, but Hong Kong is is just all encompassing. It is so much the rat race. That's certainly the case. Obviously, being in a country where, living in a country where a lot of people don't speak English, has been a bit of a culture shock. And to a degree, not everyone, but it's the first time I've ever really experienced low-level racism. There are people that aren't always a fan of expats there, and that's something that's been a bit of a strange thing. But on the whole, it's not been too bad. Everyone's generally very, very nice, and as a place to go as an expat, it's most people speak English. It was such a Western influence there that it's quite an easy place to live. But that's certainly been the biggest culture shock. But also, I suppose, actually, here's one: the amount of things you can do in a very, very short space. Like, when I was in London and I had an idea of okay, where's good to eat? I'd be like, where's good to eat in Shoreditch? Where's good to eat in Camden? Where's good to eat in Maida Vale? But in Hong Kong, there's about 17 million restaurants, all within a 2-minute walk from you. So unless you've got a recommendation, you really have no idea. It's just so much like an attack on the senses. And that was definitely a bit of a culture shock since moving across. Do I prefer living in Hong Kong or do I prefer living in London? Now, this is a question I've been asked quite a few times. And it's one that I can't really answer. I prefer London as a city, but I prefer the lifestyle in Hong Kong. So let me elaborate. In London, I love the history. I love the architecture. I love the pubs. I love the variety in people. This is something I noticed since coming home, that there's so much variety in people. People are different. People are confident. People dress in all sorts of ways and have different ways to lead their lives. And it's quite exciting to people watch in London. Whereas in Hong Kong, people are a little bit more uniform. And there isn't that quite level of variety. So in those senses, I love the city. But in Hong Kong, I love the fact that I can be on a mountain, I can be on an island, I can be in an Asian version of New York, I can be on a boat party. And I can do this all within a 24-hour period, and I can be somewhere and at an event probably within half an hour, no matter where I am. So there are pros and cons of both places, and they're both incredible in their own way. What's your favourite thing about Hong Kong? So it's a weird one. It sounds like I'm an old man here, but I generally think the fact that it's so safe is something you don't even think about. Like, I could let Ellie walk around at 5 o'clock in the morning down a back street, and I would feel totally confident that she would get home safe. And that's such a weight off your mind when you know that you're not really going to get into trouble anywhere. And it's just at a level of relaxation walking home at any point. You don't appreciate it until you realise the difference coming home. Accessibility, as I mentioned before, and the fact that everything is at my fingertips. Like, I can do so much stuff within a 24-hour period. It's incredible. And as I said as well, variety. Like, I could go in onto a bar crawl, I could go into fancy restaurants, I could go to the cinema, or I could go to a remote island, and they're all within an hour, if not less than. So the accessibility of Hong Kong is absolutely incredible. Do I like Hong Kong food, and what's the strangest thing I've eaten since moving to Hong Kong? Yes, I very much do like Hong Kong food. There are things I miss, don't be wrong, and there's a question about that later on, but I think you can get everything in Hong Kong, from phenomenal Michelin-star restaurants and, Western cuisine to dim sum to these local foods. One of the best things that I've done in the last year, actually, is a group of my friends, because one of my friends was leaving Hong Kong for good, and we decided every other Wednesday we're going to go to a local Cantonese restaurant, and a different person will choose it every time. And I've been opened my eyes to so many foods and so many places that I would never have gone that have been absolutely incredible. Some of the fish restaurants have been amazing. And in terms of the strangest thing I've eaten in Hong Kong, it would definitely have to be frog. I saw it on the menu in a few of these places, and I was like, hey, there's a whole section of frog here. Should I have it? And I was never really considering actually having it. But then when a friend actually ordered a frog clay pot, I couldn't resist trying it. And I was pleasantly surprised. Not much meat on it, but on the whole, as the thing they always say, that it tastes like chicken, is exactly how it tastes. What foods do you miss from the UK? Ellie misses like every restaurant. She misses English Mackie. She misses English chocolate. She misses Nando's. Whereas I don't really miss any of that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Nando's when I came back and had it recently, but I don't really miss any of that stuff. Maybe a good burger. Like, London is the home for burgers, and I do miss Honest Burger with my good friend Kev. But I miss small stuff. I miss Millionaire Shortbread. It is my favourite thing. I used to make it with my mum, and being from Scotland, it was such commonplace everywhere there. And every coffee shop in the UK sells it, but you cannot get it hardly anywhere in Hong Kong, and I've definitely enjoyed having that. And then little things that it's often like the things that make my diets easier that I kind of miss, things like Serene loaves, Muller rices, Rolo yogurts, and that's something I've definitely been making the most of since I've been home. What else do I miss from home? At the moment, the ability to walk around without a mask on is something that I really appreciate when being back. But outside of COVID stuff, I miss the NHS. Generally, it's very expensive to get any sort of medical care. And since being diagnosed with ADHD, that is a lot of an expense to kind of get medicine and care and looking at that sort of stuff there. So that is definitely something that is missed. The NHS is incredible and should not be taken for granted and should not be defunded. Anything else that I miss from home? Being back at my parents' house, it's so quiet, and living in London and Hong Kong, you don't really get that quiet. And even in London, you can sort of escape. When I lived in Greenwich, you're in London, but you're not in London. Whereas Hong Kong, it really is a bubble, and you don't really escape the madness of it. What new foods do you love that you can't get in the UK? Pineapple buns. Pineapple buns are incredible. For those who've never been to Hong Kong and don't know what a pineapple bun is, a pineapple bun is nothing to do with pineapples. It's called that because I think they think it looks like a pineapple, and it's just sort of like a milk bun with like a sugar crust over the top, and it's brilliant, and they're so cheap. That is definitely something. Steamed pork buns, they are the best in Hong Kong, for absolute sure. What's COVID life like in Hong Kong? Is it still tough? Short answer, yes it is. I'm currently back in the UK for 6 weeks, and I still have to do a week's quarantine in a hotel, which can get incredibly expensive. We still have mandatory mask rules with ridiculous fines, and I've been on the wrong end of one of them already and paid fine 500 quid for my mask being below my nose. And even though life's almost back to normal otherwise, there is just this general level of panic and uncertainty and fear. A lot of people in Hong Kong still remember the SARS outbreak, and because of that, people are generally very paranoid. You have people pressing lift buttons with tissues and wiping down everything before they have their dinner in restaurants, and that's each to their own. If you feel that's what you need to do to keep safe, then that's your prerogative, but you are constantly around a very nervous, panicky country that does affect your psyche, and it is really relaxing and a weight off your shoulders coming back. So yeah, really tough, but hopefully going in the right direction slowly but surely. How often have you visited home? So this is the first time I've been home since January 2020, and even then it wasn't really a holiday because I got ill pretty much immediately when I came home. Hopefully I wasn't patient zero, but so this is the first time I've been home and feeling pretty good despite getting COVID within a week of coming back. But it's been incredible, and it's been well overdue, but the borders have been closed with, at one point, 3 weeks mandatory quarantine, which I just couldn't justify the expense of coming home. So yeah, it's the first time I've been home in about 2.5 years, and seeing my family, which has been just so much, even better than I thought it was going to be. What 3 things do you still want to do in Asia, and how long do you plan to live there? So at this moment in time, we will be living in Asia for 1 more year, coming back just before our wedding in around June 2023, with us getting married on August 5th, 2023. But it really does depend on where the COVID restrictions are. If they are as they are currently, we will be coming home at the end of the school year next year. But if everything goes back to the way it was in 2019 and the chance to do a little bit of travel in Asia without quarantine, we may stay another year after that. Things are good from a work perspective there at the moment. It's quite favourable from a tax perspective there. And I still have so many places I want to see in Asia. I want to see Vietnam. I want to see Japan. I want to see more of Thailand. We only really got to Thailand before the pandemic came and the borders all closed. So we've got a lot of travelling that we still want to get done. And I haven't seen a Rugby Sevens tournament. One of the things I was most excited for was seeing Rugby Sevens, and the Rugby Sevens have been cancelled. First, due to the protests, which we landed straight into the protests. And then, obviously, because of COVID. So there's definitely some things that I want to do before leaving. So what would you say to someone who is considering to move away from home? Do it. I think, don't hesitate on it. I waited too long, and I wish I'd done it when I was much younger, and seen more of the world. So just do it. Just don't regret it. Just don't do it. An extra question that I think would be quite interesting, because I've had this, people ask it, but it wasn't on the initial ones, was what was it like during the Hong Kong protests? Was it really as bad as it looked on the news? And the answer is no. It's quite interesting. Like, you watched the news and it seemed like there was chaos and there was protests everywhere and there were people fighting in the streets. And while you did see it every now and again, and, I have unfortunately been tear gassed by being on a walkway above a protest happening, it was quite amazing, really, how there could be a protest going on one street, and one street up, you could be on a night out and not even know it was there. You couldn't hear it, couldn't see it. You knew where it was going to be, and you knew how to avoid it. The only real impact it kind of had on me, other than that one time where I really got caught in it, was just the things getting cancelled because of worry that there'd be a mass gathering. But other than that, no, the protests were not as bad as it seemed on the news. So moving on to questions that you asked about the podcast. What are the top 3 lessons you've learned from the show? Oh, this is an amazing question, and I really don't think I could answer it. Every guest I've had on has been so different and has crazy amounts of variety in the backstories of people. But I've tended to take less direct lessons and just more taking almost indirect lessons that I can't put my finger on from the way people carry themselves and how I've noticed people that are successful. The episode I did with Richie Neville was a really incredible episode because he's probably the most well-known guest that I've ever had on, an absolute megastar in the 90s. And yet he was still so humble and still so down to earth. And I thought that was a real credible lesson that you don't have to change who you are to be incredibly successful. Pat Davidson was another fantastic episode. And I went on wanting to speak about strength training and movement. And we talked about mental health and we talked about confidence in the fitness industry, which is something is really not really brought up. People assume that people in the fitness industry are confident. And I assumed Pat Davidson was a confident man. And he said that's something he's worked on for many years. And when he spoke at the end about his mountain analogy, I just thought that was incredible. And it's still something that I call back on and remember. And the importance of listening, I learned from Chris Van Vliet. I really enjoyed that show. And the amazing thing about that episode, because Chris has got an incredible following now, and he's a really hard-working man, a really, really busy man, and he had no right necessarily to say yes to someone he'd never met about asking to be on the show. And he said yes, and we had an amazing conversation. And it was really, what really I admired about that, it was how I want to be, no matter how far I go. I always want to be someone that gives back. I want my episodes to not just be trying to get big names to build an audience for me. It's about speaking to interesting people. Some of these people have bigger followings than me. Some of these people will have far less followings than me. And I want to help people below me, no matter how popular the show gets, in the same way as I will look to speak to interesting people that have already been there and built a following. And I was admired by Chris, taking a shot and giving up his time for someone that was relatively new to the podcast game, which was absolutely incredible. And on that note, some of the guests who are, people that I've worked with, I love chatting to Umar. I always learn when I chat to Umar. Alex Searle, one of my best mates in the world, and he's given me a lot of business advice, and the show with him has really helped. The show with Kevin Hoare, talking about building muscle and his journey. I learned loads that have impacted into my business. So there are so many lessons that I've learned from the show. On that note, who are your favourite guests so far? Again, for the same reason, really hard to say. I've had some episodes that have really stood out in my mind, and it was less about who they were or what the show was about, but just the vibe that I have with certain guests. I love every show that I do with Rob. We bounce off each other really well. I love every show that I do with Paul Standel from the PT Project. Really funny guy. We always bounce off each other really well. So I really love those shows. And I also liked the episode I did with Simon Miller, Tap Head. If anyone that doesn't know the reference, Simon Miller is a pro wrestling YouTuber and a fitness YouTuber now. And he is someone that I looked up to and watched for many years. So it was really nice to actually speak to him. And he is as nice as his persona, which was really lovely. But every guest has been great, and I've really enjoyed everyone that I've had on. Who are my dream guests? CM Punk, Darren Brown, Chris Williamson, Stephen Bartlett, John Berardi. One from every avenue that I love, from business to fitness to wrestling to magic, and everything in between. And The Rock. Because who doesn't want to interview The Rock? Now, moving on from the podcast into the fitness industry. So how long have I been in the fitness industry? So I've been in the fitness industry now about 11 years. Initially going from playing rugby when I was young. That was my early passion. And then when my rugby playing days ended, I got a degree in sport and exercise science. Spent most of my 3 years in Aberystwyth University, which is an incredible little town, really nice, and I wouldn't take back any of the time I spent there. People ask me sometimes whether, if you were going into the industry again, would you get a degree? Now, if someone generally wanted just to make the most of the time and learn as much as you could in terms of personal training, I would say no, don't get a degree. It's a lot of debt that you don't need to be successful. I would have spent that money and gone and traveled the world and seen mentors and done courses and done something that was much more relevant if I knew what I wanted to do. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something in health and sport and fitness. And I didn't get the grades to go into psychiatry, and this was my avenue to go in and help people. And uni for me was less about the education I got from it and more about what it did to me from a social standpoint. I learned how to speak to people that I didn't know. I learned how to get out of my comfort zone. I learned how to speak to people of the opposite sex. I learned how to be more social. I learned how to be more confident. And I think that is more important. I learned how to be independent and live on my own. And that is more important than any lecture that I will ever have. So, after my sport and exercise science degree, I started working in a little Thai boxing gym in Wolverhampton, running spin classes, and I hated it. I will never run a spin class again to save my life. Admire people that do, not for me. And then I got my first proper personal training job in Virgin Active in Birmingham, and lived there for a couple of years before getting the job at Ultimate Performance, a job that I wanted for years and years and applied tons and tons of times. And I remember getting yet another knockback in terms of my application being ignored, or just saying, come back and we don't have any places for you. And I remember thinking, yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm going to give up. And I just started dating Ellie at the time, and she said, just give it one more go, Simon. Just send it one more time. And that was the time that it worked. So don't give up if you're wanting to work for a company, or if you're wanting to do something and it's just not working for you. Keep focused. You never know when that next time is going to be the time that things kind of work out for you. And I went down to the interview, and I remember training after my first interview, and then leaving some weights out on the gym floor and put through a horrendous workout, which I think was part of the reason why I got the job, because I didn't moan and I just got up with it and sucked it up and took my training beating like a man. But that was sort of the culture. It was hard work, and it was a place where you came to work hard and learn, and that was certainly what I got. And talking about adversity, another moment before I started, I remember hitting my overdraft limit and not being able to pay for my insurance. And I thought, I can't do it. And I will be forever in debt to Ellie, who loaned me the money to do that. And I owe her my career, which is absolutely incredible. So was with them for 7 years, worked up to running education for London and then education for Hong Kong, and then turned Asia before then moving on in Hong Kong into HIT PT, where I am now. What do I do at HIT PT? Well, I run education for HIT PT as well as take on some one-to-one personal training sessions. Great group of guys there. Generally the most fun I've had working in the fitness industry. Really great management team who just want to have a better place to work. They want to create a better place for their clients and their members. And it's just a real breath of fresh air. Fantastic place to work. Cannot vouch for it enough. So, next question. Do you want to stay in the fitness industry forever? I do want to have some impact in the fitness industry forever. That's 100% for sure. And I love that. And I can't really imagine what else I'd do. But I do love this podcast. And if there was anything that I would do, that I would transition to, it would be more on the podcasting side of things and entertainment and that sort of stuff and the mentoring side of things. But at this moment in time, I still love working with people one-to-one. I still love working with my online coaching clients. So maybe, I don't know. I have loose plans of where I want to go, but I just tend to work hard, keep my head down and see where things take me. So next question. What are the key characteristics of people who achieve successful body transformations? So the biggest one for me is communication. When working with people, particularly online, the people who look at this like a learning experience rather than something that is succeeded or failed, the people who come to you when they're struggling and open up, the people who are working with you are always the people who succeed. And in the online game, this is so obvious that people, when they struggle, when they get overwhelmed, the people who have their head in the right space for this, that will power through these roadblocks, are the people that reach out and ask questions. The people that sort of disappear, the people that sort of hide, the people that don't check in when things aren't going right are always the people that struggle more. Communication is hands down the biggest characteristic of people who achieve successful transformations. The second one is a level of attention to detail, especially when it comes to calorie tracking. Most of the time, people think calorie tracking doesn't work for them, or they think that they're doing everything perfectly, and it may be their hormones or anything like this. But most people don't have an attention to detail when it comes to tracking, especially when it comes to the weekends, and they're actually eating considerably more calories than they think they are. If you don't believe me, go and watch a show on Channel 4, it's on All 4, called Secret Eaters, where they basically film people who said, I only eat 1,500 calories and can't lose weight, and they film them for a week. They get people rummaging through their bins, and at the end of the week they have two big Henry VIII style dining room tables, and one of them has all the food they think they're eating, and here's the food they actually are eating. And when you consider chips nicked off their partner's plates, the lattes, the oils, the snacks they forget about, the weekend calorie excesses, it adds up to a crazy amount of excess calories. So having an attention to detail, the people who have nailed that down and know pretty much what they're eating on a day-to-day basis have way more freedom in their calories, tend to be able to fit more things in, tend to, in turn, find the whole process easier. If there's one more, is that people who create a structure around things. Often when people struggle to get to the gym or struggle to stick to their meals, it's because their life is chaotic. They have no structure around their training times. They have no structure around when they're doing their food prep, like blocking things into the diary, especially for people who are now working from home and their structure isn't done for them by having a working day, is more important than ever. And it's something I've learnt doing more and more work remotely. Certainly this trip as well, I've had to rethink my structure for my day. 3 tips for improving your gym sessions. So first off is having a bit of an idea of what muscle you're trying to work when you go into an exercise. Don't just go through the motions. Know what you should feel. Because if you know what you should feel, you kind of know if it's wrong or not. The second bit of advice I'd have is, if in doubt, go slower. Yes, we've all heard that thing that you need to explode to maximize muscle growth. But if you can't control that, Yeah, imagine if you are a right-handed person, you're trying to sign your name in your left hand. You would go slow because your nervous system wasn't adapted. You wouldn't speed it. If you're new to the gym, if you're new to an exercise, go slow. Learn to initiate from the working muscle. Keep tension there. When that becomes second nature, you can start to speed it up. The last bit of advice I give you is to take things as close to failure as you can early stages. It's popular in the fitness industry now to talk about 1 or 2 reps in reserve and how many reps in reserve should we leave. But the problem is when you're new to the gym, what you think is 1 rep in reserve might be 8, 9, 10, 11 reps in reserve. So I urge you to just go as hard as you can. Find out where you break down and you'll learn quicker where a true 1 rep in reserve is, and then you can begin to auto-regulate your training. Take a logbook, look to beat it until it's hard to beat anymore, and then you'll have an idea of where you're going. Top 3 tips to improve your nutrition. We spoke about this earlier on. It's having an attention for detail when it comes to tracking calories. And I would recommend tracking your calories. If you've never tracked your calories before, it's like managing your finances. If you don't know what's coming in and out of your account, what hope do you have in managing your finances? You're just kind of spending stuff and hoping you get richer at the end of the month. When it comes to tracking calories, people don't look at it the same way. So track and understand how much is coming in. The second thing was to include protein with every meal. Protein is satiating. So people who tend to have high protein diets tend to auto-regulate their calories without thinking about it because they're more full. Also allows you to hold on to muscle mass, which is good. We all want to look good at the end of it. And it has a higher thermic effect. So it also burns for extra calories. So certainly have increased protein intake, making sure that you track your food, and then maximize food volume. Hunger fucks with people's diets. And I see people all the time where they're looking at trying to fill much processed food as you can get into the diet, if it fits your macro style, and then ravenously hungry. So look at how can I make this amount of calories more food than I've ever seen in my life. And then when 80-90% of that is done, and that most of your diet is big voluminous foods, fit in a little bit of what you want, and then you'll find something that is that sweet spot between a bit of variety, but enough structure and enough volume to make it easy. Top 3 tips to improve your recovery. First one is to prioritize your sleep. And this is one that I'm still working on. When I sleep better, I crave less, I'm less hungry, I have more energy, my mental health is better. It really does everything. Yet we don't prioritize it. It's that hustle mentality. Prioritize your sleep. The second one is to drink enough water. 3 litres, I would say, is absolute minimum for most people. Biggest bit of advice when it comes to drinking water is get yourself the biggest bottle you can find. If you have a 2 litre bottle, you'll consume at least 2 litres. If you have a 500ml bottle, once you finish that, you might forget to go and fill it up again. But you feel better, energy's better, cravings are better, everything's better when we do that. And the third bit of tip is one I got from Luke Lehman, is to have a hobby or something planned in your diary for downtime. Now, I used to say it had to be a hobby, and it depends how all or nothing mentality you are. I am quite all or nothing mentality. And sometimes when I go into a hobby, it's just an extra pressure I put on myself. I found that recently where I tried to give everything to a hobby and give everything to my business. And when my business knew, it just didn't work. So I've backed off from the hobby, but I have now replaced it with things that are downtime. And I will, when I found a place where I can maybe shift that priority away from the business a little bit, when I can go on maintenance mode, I can bring the hobby back in. Favorite and least favorite body part to train. Nearly everyone's least favorite body part to train is legs, right? And I tell you what, on the days where I'm tired because I've not had enough sleep, or I've not managed my nutrition well, or I've not drank enough water, legs is my worst body part to train. I just don't want to do it, but I have to, and I get it done. But if I'm well prepared and well rested and well recovered, I do quite enjoy training legs, especially if I found a routine that works with my structure. Generally, most favourite body part to train these days, probably chest, any push exercise. I find that really, really enjoyable. Least these days, probably back, just because I struggle to extend my spine, so it's always a bit fiddly. But it changes month on month. It really, really does. What is my favourite and least favourite lifts? Right now, I've always been a big fan of deadlifting, but right now I quite enjoy safety bar squatting. I find it's just a skill that I can look at improving a little bit each time. If I'm in a gym with a hack squat, that is absolutely my favourite lift because I can just get in, lock in, and train really, really hard. Least favourite, anything overhead because it absolutely exposes my weaknesses at the moment. But that is what it is. So, what supplements do I take and what should I take? At the moment, I'm very minimal with supplementation. I take a magnesium sort of product. I get my supplements from Shapeshifters. It's a friend of mine in Birmingham who has a phenomenal range. So I take his meal replacement shake, which now I'm back in the UK, I've replaced with Huel because I can buy it in the supermarket. I take a magnesium product and a product called Rebalance, which is things that are precursor to GABA to help calm my nervous system down. And that's really it. I occasionally go on and off taking an essential fatty acid, but that's really it. I'm generally very minimal. And I also take an electrolyte just to help my energy. One of the biggest things that people do that makes them feel like shit when they're dieting is cut out all salt, especially when you're training, especially in a hot climate. So I always make sure that I have an electrolyte to make sure when it's so humid in Hong Kong and I'm training and I'm moving around doing a lot of steps that I don't absolutely crash and burn. When it comes to what supplements should you take, it really does depend. What's your blood work saying? What's your recovery saying? What potentially you're deficient in? What's your nutritional status? There's too many questions to say, but a good protein powder, a good multivitamin, you can't really go far wrong with those. Coaching clients or mentoring trainers, what do you prefer? Very hard to say. I love the education I do with HitPT. I love mentoring the guys. I love the buzz of public speaking. So that is definitely something I really, really enjoy. But I also love that feeling when you have a client that really wants to change and something just clicks and they start getting that momentum. There's nothing quite like it. Moving on. Sue, a little bit more closing questions about me. What political hill will you fight for life? Gun laws. Gun laws in America, especially in the moment, I don't get it. I don't understand. I think it shows that in America, profit is more important than a lot of people's lives, and it's becoming a problem that's becoming more and more of a problem, which is really scary. I'm not saying that we should take away people's guns, but I do think that it should be far less easy to get them. The Supreme Court ruling recently about being legal just to carry handguns is madness to me. The arguments of if there's a school shooting, we should just arm all the teachers and staff is absolutely madness to me. That doesn't stop gun violence. That just creates more friendly fire. Yes, you can say that it's not gun laws, that it's not guns that cause these mass shootings, it's mental health issues or problems that people are facing. Yes, but I'd also argue is try to get that person to go on a mass stabbing and they won't do anywhere near as much damage. Yes, they might still be able to get their hands on guns, but it'd be far less likely. If you had stricter controls, you have to have a driver's license to drive. You know, you can't buy a Kinder Egg because it might be dangerous, but you can just walk into a gun show without any restrictions upon you and buy a gun. And I just think that is absolute madness, especially when the biggest killer in the Western world is, for men in particular, is suicide. And people also make the argument that people who want to commit suicide will commit suicide regardless whether they have a gun or not. And while that may be true, most people who have survived suicide attempts don't often want to do it again. They don't die from suicide. Most people that survive suicide attempts don't die from suicide. So what does that tell you? That often that suicide isn't a person that's depressed, that's adamant and just absolutely 100% made up their mind that they're going to kill themselves. There are people in the moment that feel trapped and feel lost and feel no other way out. And if you give that person a gun, the chances of surviving that attempt are very slim. But if you have some of the other things like overdoses and other avenues of killing yourself, the chances of failing those attempts are higher, and in turn we could save much more people, as well as you take away the ability for accidents. So I think if we had proper background checks, if we made sure guns had to be locked up into some sort of cabinet, you could only really buy hunting rifles, and if you wanted a semi-automatic gun, it stays at the range, because what else are you going to be shooting other than targets with that gun if you're a responsible gun owner? But that I'm not someone who owns a gun. I'm not someone that's been to America. I'm sure someone will disagree with me about this. And if someone wants to come on the show and talk gun laws with me, I will happily listen and happily see the other side of the argument. The other one is awareness of male mental health. As I said, it's the biggest killer in men my age, which I think is really, really scary. And I have known many people that it's happened to firsthand. my uncle's best friend, who I was very, very close to, committed suicide. My uncle, although he didn't commit suicide, losing his job was a massive impact on him going into problems with alcohol addiction. And I've known other people that I've known through school that have unfortunately gone that way. So it is a real problem, and it's something that I generally think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that people do what I do for a living and can generally help through the physical act of improving someone's confidence and for taking ownership, making people feel maybe a little bit less lost and to build their confidence up. I think it's incredible. Do I speak any languages? I barely speak English. No, I don't. I should learn Cantonese after being in Hong Kong 3 years, but it's such a difficult language. At some point, it's on the bucket list to learn a little bit of a language, but no, I do not. Do I have any piercings or tattoos? No, I do not. I am too indecisive, and nothing means enough to me to not regret it. When I was getting really into my card magic, I was tempted to have a small playing card somewhere, so I could do a reveal where I could do a card force and then make it like their card appear on my body in a tattoo that doesn't rub off. I thought that was quite cool, but maybe one day, maybe when I probably get back into the hobby again, I might do that. What's my favourite ice cream? Mint chocolate chip or pistachio? How is the wedding planning going? Yeah, good. Looking at the groomsmen's suits now in the next few weeks. Ellie has got her bridesmaid dresses. Ellie has got her wedding dress. Not that I'm allowed to see it. I'm getting closer to arranging my kilt, which I'm going to buy, which is really exciting. We have our venue, which I haven't seen yet. I am actually going to see it in just over a week's time. Well, actually a week's time. A week today, I'm going to go and be seeing the venue, which is awesome. So yeah, it's going really good. We got a photographer, so still lots to do, but it's definitely going in the right direction. How did I meet my partner? So for those of you who don't know, I am engaged, as you should probably guess from this show, to a wonderful, wonderful human being called Ellie Ingemels. She is hands down the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I met her on Plenty of Fish, the dating site that happened before Tinder. I'm an old man. I never really got the Tinder bubble. But I started chatting to she started chatting to me on Plenty of Fish, and I replied back, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation to the point where I was messaging her on Christmas Day. We met in between Christmas Day and New Year's Day 8 years ago. I was so nervous that I put on a pair of chinos I thought would look good, realising they were about a size too small now, and was basically waddling around. I didn't trust the shirt I was wearing, so when I was out before the date, I went and bought myself a brand new shirt and had my old shirt in a bag. We went for drinks at one of my favourite bars in Birmingham. And then we decided to get some food because she had a few too many drinks and she was stumbling around on our first date. But I'd never met somebody that I could click with so quickly. And the conversation flowed so effortlessly. And 8 years later, and I've absolutely never looked back. What does Ellie do for a living? She is a primary school teacher, and generally she is one of the most gifted and natural primary school teachers I've ever seen in my life. Of course I am biased, but she just has this amazing ability that kids love her, and she really, 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 really enjoys it. She has a knack for it. She knows how to inspire children, and she is a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And I learned so much from her in terms of my coaching ability from her. Has your accent changed since I moved? I don't actually know. Now, I don't really have a particularly strong accent of anything. They occasionally get the Black Country twang, but that's pretty much it because I moved to Wolverhampton when I was about a year old and grew up there. But having lived in Wales, having lived in Scotland, having lived in the Midlands, having lived in London, having lived in Hong Kong, I have a very, I suppose, generic accent. But that being said, when I moved to Aberystwyth, I remember vividly my ex-girlfriend saying to me, he goes, "Is everything okay, Si?" And I went, "Yeah, fine, why?" He goes, "Well, you just didn't sound like you," and I was scared. So what happened is I spoke to somebody from Warsaw at this drinks that we went to at the Student Union, and my accent came out massively thick. So has my accent changed moving to Hong Kong? I don't personally know, but maybe my friends and family may say differently, and I bet I will sound much more from the Black Country when I go back to Hong Kong. What's my favourite type of music? Generally rock and heavy metal. But but anything with a bit of power. If you look at my music taste, it goes from really hardcore metal to more commercial rock to Taylor Swift to wrestling themes to Red Hot Chili Peppers, literally, and everything in between. So my music taste is eclectic, but anything with power, anything I can feel I can lift to, I'm generally pretty happy with. What are my biggest fears? Heights is the obvious one. Hate them. Don't like heights at all. But also just like I fear not jumping at chances. I'm generally quite a risk averse person, and I'm trying to jump at more things. As I said at the start of this show, the Richard Branson quote that I'd want to live by is say yes first and learn how to do it later. And I've done amazing things from doing that, and I just need to learn to do it more and jump into opportunities head first. So I fear getting to 50, 60, 70 and realising I haven't done half the things that I ideally wanted to do. So they're probably it. And lastly, what's the plans for Made Coaching and Hit PT in the next 5 years? So I know some things. Some things I will say on the show, some things I will let you wait and see, and some things I don't. I tend to we have a rough idea of where I'm going, but I want to work hard and I don't want to close myself off to other opportunities. For Made Coaching, the things that are coming in the immediate future are a revamp to our check-in system to allow our clients to be able to give us better feedback, be able to articulate themselves and their struggles more, and be able to give a better service to them. That's happening within the next few days. Then looking at just improving the service and taking away friction points as we go. I also would like to we've just taken on our first member of staff in a VA, and I want to at some point take on a therapist, so that somebody, when they sign up, can go into learning about their why and their goals and some of the barriers they face and trying to eliminate them before we started. Because I know with the clients I've had that have gone to therapy prior to coaching, they tend to always have better results, and you always go into a coaching process with a better mindset. And I want to make sure that becomes part of the service. Other than that, we're just going to be working on improving the quality of service we give, improving the level of results that we get, and looking at being at one of the forefronts of not only results producing online coaching companies, but also a company that truly educates their clients in order to not only get in shape, but find their blueprint, find the approach that works for them and their lifestyle, and to educate them into be able to stay in shape long term. For Hit PT, obviously, this isn't down to me. This is up to James Campion. But from what I know, we are looking to expand into a few countries. That I'm not going to say that yet, what they are. We're just looking at refining the education system. So we have our online education portal, which is going from strength to strength, with more content being added regularly to help our trainers. And we have a syllabus now up for almost a year's worth of content, which we'll be looking to refine and improve to make sure that our trainers are the best results producing trainers in Hong Kong and eventually the globe. So there you go. There are some questions about me. Hope you've enjoyed this little special episode. And if you have any further questions, let me know. But thank you very much, guys. Thank you to every single one of you who has downloaded the show, shared the show, listened to the show in the last year. I can't thank you enough. This has been one of my favorite things to do. And here's to another year of the Self-Made Podcast. And if you are still listening to this episode and you wanting to improve your health, as I said in the intro, we do have a few coaching slots available. But for anybody who's listened to this point, if you want a free diet audit or training audit for me to go through completely free, go through your training, go through your nutrition, jumping on a call with you, then drop me a message. As a thank you, I will do this absolutely free. No expectations after that call. But hope you're well, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.